want to interview them. Well, she wasn't available for an interview because she left the house immediately, and she went to see their friend that I mentioned earlier that cut up the gun, Chet Atkinson, and they took her to the doctor where she got some sedatives, and then she went and stayed at his house, and she didn't talk to the police until the following day. And even then, her statement to the police came through Atkinson. He delivered her statement to the police. Well, see, the police need to talk to her. And she should have been a suspect because she's a beneficiary of the estate. She's going to get all the royalties and inherit everything. So, they need to talk to her.
But you Charlie, let me ask you a quick question, though. This little town in Idaho where this happened, like how large was the police force in 1961? Like a couple of sheriffs?
It's small.
Yeah.
It's small.
Yeah.
It's the sheriff that came out.
Yeah, one or two guys, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even so, I mean, you have to, there should have been crime scene photographs. Another thing a crime scene will tell you, and this is important because I didn't tell you where he died, but he died in the foyer of the home. Now, a foyer is the entranceway, right?
Yeah.
That's where you come into the home. It's 5 feet by 7 feet. It's a small area. It's not really a room. It's the foyer. It's where you take off your boots. But I would really want to know, and the police should have wanted to know, which direction was the gun fired? I mean, was it from the doorway into the house? Did he open the door? Because the time now is like 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. And why would you go to the foyer at 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning, except perhaps to open the door if someone's knocking at the door?
Right. It wouldn't be a location for a suicide or a gun cleaning location.
Yeah, it's a strange place for the.
Yeah.
So it's but the blood evidence, the blood spatters and so on, and the shot from the shotgun, it's going to be a mess on the wall somewhere. Or if it's on the ceiling, that might indicate he was shot from below. Everything went up. But, where is the mess, is important. Because that's going to tell you something. But see, we don't have any of that because they didn't take any crime scene photographs and they didn't write a report. There's no report. And there was no inquest. The coroner said, well, we don't need an inquest. Frankly, what they said was that Mrs. Hemingway said it was an accident. We're going to go with that. That's what they said. And that's strange. Let me tell you a little bit about the timeline, though, because I need to sort of tell you what's going on here and how this happened. Because Hemingway was, well, he was quite a character, but he was under surveillance from the FBI.
Right.
Okay. From the 1940s. And if people want to look online, there's a place called The Vault, and then FBI reports. You can Google that and find it. But they have these, it's like public domain now, these FBI reports of famous people, and Hemingway's is up there for what it is that they release. They don't always release everything, but what they did release is up there, and it's about 120 pages. And it does, if you know how to look at these documents, you can find some little things in there, that are maybe they forgot to redact or they didn't mean to release. But then things change over time. You find out other stuff that makes pieces of the puzzle snap together. But this FBI report of his shows that he was under surveillance from the 1940s. And Hoover was very jealous of Ernest Hemingway because Hemingway was working with the State Department during World War II. He had his boat down in Cuba there, and he would go out like he's fishing, but he was looking for German U-boats. And he had a gang down there in Cuba called the Crook Factory, and there's like a little espionage club of his, and Hemingway did not like anybody doing the spying except himself. He didn't like the competition, so he kept an eye on Hemingway. And when Hemingway, just before he died, he went to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. His doctor, George Sievers in Idaho, suggested he go there to be treated for high blood pressure. And Dr. Butt at the clinic and Dr. Sievers both said that he went there for blood pressure and diabetes and not for any mental illness. But see, as the years went by after Hemingway's death, people said, oh, yeah, he was crazy. Well, his wife and his supposed good friend, A.E. Hotchner, who I don't really trust, he was another Hemingway biographer and a guy who knew Hemingway. They said Hemingway was crazy and was paranoid and all this stuff. But see, he knew he was being followed by the FBI. And there was a doctor at the Mayo Clinic who did psychiatry. His name was Dr. Howard Rome. And this guy's actually in the Warren Commission report because he did a psychological autopsy of Lee Harvey Oswald. Of course, he never met Lee Harvey Oswald, but this guy, he can analyze somebody after they're dead that he never met. And he said that Lee Harvey Oswald, he told the Warren Commission that he was a very poor reader in school, and he had trouble with reading, so he had a low self-esteem, so he wanted to kill John F. Kennedy to make everybody see that he's really an important person. And it's just ridiculous.
Well, anyway, at least he didn't say that was a suicide, too, okay?
No, but Rome was... I mean, this guy is, he's working with the feds on covering up the JFK assassination and blaming Lee Harvey Oswald. Well, when Hemingway was at the Mayo Clinic, Rome was an informant for the FBI and keeping the FBI office in Minneapolis informed of what's going on with Hemingway at the clinic. Well, anyway, Hemingway gets released, and he goes back to Ketchum, Idaho, with his wife, Mary, and he went back by car, and he had a sparring partner, because Hemingway liked to box. He had a sparring partner named George Brown, and Brown drove the car. So the three of them went back. Hemingway sat in the front seat with Brown. Mary was in the back seat, and they drove, I think it took 5 days. They left around the end of June to get back to Idaho. And once they arrived, they went out to dinner. This is the night before he dies. And this passage is from, when I learned this from Mary Hemingway's book, and this really, really rings true with me. Let me tell you what she said. She said that they went to this restaurant. It's called Christinia. Anyway, at Christinia restaurant, it's across the street from Chet Atkinson's motel, and he had like a little shopping center, strip shopping center there. He's the neighbor that buried the gun. So they're across the street at the Christiana restaurant in Ketchum, Idaho, and Mary wrote that they wedged into a small far corner table. Okay? And this is, I know why you sit in the corner table of a restaurant.
And it's the gangster seat.
I did this with Patrick Norton. Pardon me?
The gangster seat.
Exactly. Exactly. It's the Hemingway, and I did this with Patrick Knowlton and John Clark because we were tailed by the FBI. And they used to, when they follow you, it's what they call overt surveillance. They want you to know that you're being followed. So you see these agents, and they're doing it to spook you. Well, if Hemingway's sitting in that far inside corner seat, I know what he's looking for, right? I thought, this isn't good. So anyhow, she said in her book that when they were sitting there, Ernest asked the waitress, Susie, the regular waitress, who these guys were that just came in, because it's a Saturday night and it's late, and two guys come in, and he said, "Who are they?" And she said, I think they're probably just a couple of salesmen from Twin Falls. And Ernest Hemingway muttered, "Like hell they are. If they were salesmen, they'd be home." He said, "They're the FBI." Now this guy he's nobody's fool, okay? And I think he was right on the money, because he was, you can see his FBI file. They're following him all the time, right? Dr. Howard Rome is reporting on him. So, he can spot the agents when they come in, and that's why he's sitting in the corner table.
Especially a small town like that, yeah. New faces, yeah.
Oh, yeah. They're not there she's the waitress. Yeah. They're not salesmen on a Saturday night. They're not out on the road. They're home. And Hemingway knew that. So, of course, the next morning, that's Saturday night, the next morning, he's shot at 7 a.m.
Oh, really?
So I have to wonder where are these FBI agents the next morning, I'm wondering, right? And of course, one of the things the FBI liked to do was to intimidate people and to blackmail people. And if that doesn't work, they'll kill you. They kill Martin Luther King. They'll kill people.
Yeah, they were trying to drive a king to suicide too. They try and drive you to suicide too. And if that doesn't work, then
this is what they tried to do with Patrick Knowlton. They tried to make Patrick Knowlton paranoid, and because they were following him around all the time. And even when he wasn't being followed, if somebody stared at him, he thought they were following him. It was really cruel. But this is a technique that's done. Now, I found in these documents, a year and a half before Hemingway was shot, the U.S. State Department memo was written that said it's unfortunate that a person of his position and reputation should publicly take a position that displays strong criticism of his government and compatriots. Well, see, he was a dissident. And, you know, if you're a dissident in our country, a lot of people don't realize this, you know, you can get yourself targeted by these alphabet agencies. So they listed him, the FBI listed him as a subversive, and some officials considered him an enemy of the state. Now, you know, these officials would be willing to collaborate with Hemingway's, you know, widow to cover up a murder because, I mean, well, journalists would cover it up, but his widow was a journalist. I mean, Mary Hemingway was a journalist. Mm. And you really can't trust this woman because she and Hemingway were both married when they started dating and ended up getting married. So, they're not trustworthy people here.
Yeah, Hemingway was married 4 times, yeah.
4 times, yeah. But, there's not a shred of credible evidence to suggest that he killed himself. I mean, there just isn't any evidence of that. So the first, one of the UPI stories that first came out, the first official statement from the coroner said that he died at 7:30 at his home, and his wife thinks it was accidental while cleaning his gun. So that's the first story. And then the UPI reported that the officials did not see any gun cleaning equipment in the room. Well, there wouldn't be any in the foyer anyway. But the following day, the United Press International asked McGoldrick, this guy's the coroner, they asked him if the self-inflicted gunshot wound was, did he kill himself or was it an accident? And this is what he said. This is a direct quote from the coroner. He said, "I wasn't there, so I don't know. Maybe the truth will never be known. No one saw it. The family's willing to let it go that way, and that's all right with me. The wife thinks it was an accident." So see, right out of the gate, this thing was an accident. It was not a suicide initially. Initially, it was an accident. But over time, it changed. And I told you about that New York Times story that was on July 9th. Well, later, Time magazine would change the story and say that the death was not an accident. This is July 14th, so this would be almost 2 weeks after the death. The Time magazine, usually the magazines, the newspapers came out daily, but the magazines would come out
monthly.
Monthly or weekly. I think Time magazine was a weekly. Mm. But on July 14th, they had more time to gather the story, more time to get the evidence. So Time magazine wrote a story on July 14th that said that the death was not an accident, but a suicide.
Well, okay, let me ask you this, Hugh Turley. What was the new information they got? Who were they talking to?
They didn't have any new. Yeah. They didn't have any.
Yeah.
This is what Time magazine said. They reported in Time magazine that Mary Hemingway insisted in July 14th issue that it was an accident. But Time magazine said, and they put this in quotes, I'm quoting Time magazine, they said plainly it could not have been. See, people didn't think he could have accidentally killed himself because the guy was very familiar with guns.
Right.
He was a hunter. He used all kinds of firearms. And by the way, this gun that he was shot with was a Boss. It's called BOSS shotgun, and they're made in England. And this was a custom-made gun for Hemingway that was silver inlaid with real silver. This is a very valuable piece. I mean, it's worth tens of thousands of dollars. You don't cut it up and bury it. Okay?
Let me ask you this. Did you look into any statistics? Because I know like if you're cleaning a weapon, an accidental discharge may be common. But how many of those accidental discharges result in a death? I would assume.
I don't know.
I would assume very, very low, especially with a shotgun. Because when you're cleaning, you got that long rod. You're pumping it up and down with little cloths and stuff like that, little brush. You're spraying and stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so if it goes off, you got a rod in there. You know what I mean? What else are you cleaning on this thing? That trigger?
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's just not believable to me. I mean, it started for me with the gun being cut up and buried, but then, if you start to read the later materials, the further you get away from the death. Now, initially it's an accident, and the coroner said we're going to go with that because that's what the wife said, so we're going with that. Mm. Well, that didn't last too long. It changed, and then once the suicide story started to take root, then everybody said, "Oh, he was depressed. Oh my gosh, he was so depressed, and everybody's saying he's depressed. And see, Hotster and the widow when they wrote their books later, they would say that he thought he was being followed by the FBI.